Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be covering every team in the Eastern Conference as the season starts in just 2 days. The Western Conference video will be out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that as well. If you're interested in this type of content, please make sure to subscribe and like the video, and I'll be making sure to drop a lot more content like this throughout the season. For this video, I'll be going through every team by their division, and the lineups that I've shown on each team's card are projected lineups from a combination of national and local outlets for the team to ensure consistency. Let's get right into it. Starting off with the Southeast Division, we have the Atlanta Hawks. At point guard, we have Trae Young. At shooting guard, we have Dyson Daniels. At small forward, we have Zachary Risachet. At power forward, we have Jalen Johnson. And at center, we have Kristaps Porzingis. After a disappointing season and another play-in exit, the Atlanta Hawks look to strengthen their roster in this offseason in multiple ways. Their big offseason acquisition was Kristaps Porzingis from the Boston Celtics, and they also made other key moves in free agency as well, like signing Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well as Luke Kennard. Atlanta had been in the middle of the pack over the past few years, but these moves have excited a lot of fans, and with the expected growth of their second overall pick, Zachary Risachet, and one of the breakout players of last season, Dyson Daniels, as well as the return of Jalen Johnson, their dynamic forward, they've built quite a solid team around Trae Young for this season. Quinn Snyder is also an excellent coach, so I expect the Hawks to be one of the top 6 seeds this season and potentially even be a team that can compete to make it out of the East if everything clicks for them. Trae Young is the engine and the best player of this team, and they go as he does. If he has a great year, I expect this team to go as far as he will take them, but the Hawks have surrounded him with pieces that can make up for his defensive deficiencies as well as be able to knock down open shots that he will be generating for them. Expect this team to be an exciting watch for this season. Next up, we have the Charlotte Hornets. At point guard, we have LaMelo Ball. At shooting guard, we have Brandon Miller. At small forward, we have Kon Knueppel. At power forward, we have Miles Bridges. And at center, we have Moussa Diabate. After a season with the new head coach in front office, the Hornets were plagued by injuries to their 2 best players, as well as to a lot of other key players, which prevented fans from seeing how good their young lineup could actually be. After picking Kon Knueppel from Duke in this year's draft, as well as Liam McNeely from UConn, the Hornets have surrounded their star player LaMelo Ball with complementary pieces that can shoot, defend, and also be secondary ball handlers when needed to be as well. I worry about their big man depth, but as long as this team stay healthy, they should be one of the most fun teams to watch this season. However, I don't have high expectations for them as they're still very young and will have a lot of growing pains. Injuries are also a huge question mark for this team, especially with their star player LaMelo Ball, who has only been able to play over 55 games once in his career thus far, and his health will be the indicator as to where his team goes. If he isn't on the floor, this team will probably be one of the worst in the NBA, but if he is, then maybe they might have an outside shot to make the play-in. Next, we have the Orlando Magic, who I personally think is the best team the Southeast Division has to offer. Sure, the Heat have more history and the Hawks have strengthened their roster a lot, but I still think the Magic are poised to make some noise in the Eastern Conference this season. At point guard, we have Jalen Suggs. At shooting guard, we have Desmond Bane. At small forward, we have Franz Wagner. At power forward, we have Paolo Banchero. And at center, we have Wendell Carter Jr. Orlando has been slowly getting themselves into conversations of being one of the best and elite teams in the Eastern Conference, as well as the NBA over the past 2 seasons. With the rise of Paolo Banchero into becoming a bona fide star, as well as Franz Wagner, who has blossomed into becoming an excellent player as well, head coach Jamal Mosley has made this team a defensive juggernaut for every team to deal with in the NBA. Last season, they had a huge problem with making 3-point shots as they were bottom 5 in the association at doing so. But after trading for Desmond Bane from the Grizzlies, this number should improve as Bane is a bona fide scorer and sharpshooter who will help the Magic tremendously. I expect this team to be a top 4 seed in the conference and a team that definitely has a shot to make it out of the East, but it all depends on how they shoot, as I trust them to do everything else at a high level. I also like the Tyus Jones pickup, and I do think Tristan da Silva is due for a second-year jump. Jace Richardson has looked really good in preseason so far, and we'll see how Jonathan Isaac comes back from injury. Regardless, expect this team to be at the top, or one of the teams at the top of the East. Next up, we have the Miami Heat. At point guard, we have Tyler Hero, who's apparently set to miss 8 to 12 weeks, but we will see if that timetable improves, as it should. At shooting guard, we have Norman Powell. At small forward, we have Andrew Wiggins. At power forward, we have Nikola Jovic, and at center, we have Bam Adebayo. After a rocky and drama-filled year, the Miami Heat have finally turned the chapter on the Jimmy Butler era, and they find themselves in the middle of the pack once again. They were able to acquire Norman Powell in the offseason from the Clippers, as well as Andrew Wiggins in the Jimmy Butler trade, so their lineup looks interesting. Tyler Hero is set to miss the first set of games this season due to a foot injury, but is apparently on track to come back quicker than expected. Nikola Jovic has been getting a lot more faith from Erik Spoelstra, and while there have been deliberations with starting Bam Adebayo with rookie sensation Kel'el Ware, due to issues with depth at the big man position, I expect the Heat to roll with Jovic instead of Ware to start the season. I think the Heat are poised to have an interesting year. They lean into playing with more pace in the preseason, but have also dropped all their games while doing so. I hope they lean into their youth this season as well, because I do think their young core could be a lot more exciting if they were given more opportunity. Bam Adebayo is also due for a bounce-back season, and if the Heat want a chance to make the playoffs, they will need his offense desperately, especially with Hero missing time to start the season. Expect the Heat to be, as they always are, in the play-in, but always a team that is a tough out for any playoff team in the East. Sadly, I don't think they'll make it far though. Lastly, to round out the Southeast Division teams, we have the Washington Wizards. At point guard, we have Bob Carrington. At shooting guard, we have CJ McCollum. At small forward, we have Chris Middleton. At power forward, we have Bilal Coulibaly. And at center, we have second overall pick, Alex Sarr. The Wizards are coming off a year to forget, in which they lost a ton of games, were still not awarded with a high pick in the draft either. They were able to select Trey Johnson out of Texas, who I think was a great addition though, and I think he'll be a good fit alongside their young core. There are question marks along how long CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton are expected to be in DC, as they strike me as veterans who could contribute on a championship team and are purely in DC just because of their bad contracts. I do think this Wizards team can be exciting, but they need to figure out who they want to prioritize with their young core. They have quite a few exciting guys with potential that are coming off their bench, such as Keyshawn George and AJ Johnson, but the big onus will be on Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly to do the heavy lifting for this team. There are also question marks as to whether Bob Carrington is a true point guard, as a lot of people think he's a combo, including myself. I don't expect this team to do much. I expect them to be one of the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the East this season. I still think they're a few years away, but it'll be fun to watch their young core develop this year. Moving on to the Central Division, we have the Chicago Bulls to start off. At point guard, we have Josh Giddey. At shooting guard, we have Kobe White. At small forward, we have Isaac Okoro. At power forward, we have Matas Buzelis. And at center, we have Nikola Vucevic. After coming off a play-in blowout loss to the Miami Heat, the Bulls had a relatively quiet offseason, as most of the noise was surrounded by what they would do with their contract of Josh Giddey, their starting point guard. They were able to sign him for a relatively good value, and Giddey was definitely a good piece for Chicago last season. He was electric in transition and even found improvements in his jump shot to make him close to being a sustainable shooter. However, the Bulls, as well as Giddey, struggled in the half court as they were not able to generate much offense when the pace got slower. I'm really high on Matas Buzelis though, and I think he legit has all-star potential. He's coming off of a great preseason. I think he's due for a big year. Him, Giddey, and Kobe White should be a good trio for this upcoming season, but unfortunately, I do not see much promise or hope for the rest of the roster. They drafted a project in Noah Essengay, who I'm not sure will play too much, and I think they've been holding on for Nikola Vucevic for a few years too many now. I expect this team to also be in play-in conversations, but for both fans' sakes, I hope they avoid the play-in so that they can finally get a higher pick in the draft and move towards a rebuild. Next up, we have the reigning number 1 seed, the Cleveland Cavaliers. At point guard, we have Darius Garland. At shooting guard, we have Donovan Mitchell. At small forward, we have DeAndre Hunter. At power forward, we have Evan Mobley. And at center, we have Jarrett Allen. The Cavs are coming off of their best regular season performance since the LeBron era, but a majorly disappointing playoff performance. Although they swept the Heat in convincing fashion, they lost to the 5-seeded Pacers in 5 games, where it seemed like everyone not named Donovan Mitchell or Evan Mobley struggled tremendously. They also didn't have an eventful offseason either, and brought back most of the core of their roster, but were able to trade for Lonzo Ball to replace Ty Jerome, who was a sensation for them last season. This team plays extremely fast and shoots the ball at a lights-out rate, but when the pressure got to them against Indiana, they struggled to make shots. They're also missing their best shooter, Max Strus, for the start of the season, so we'll have to see how they cope without his shooting. I think this team has the potential to come out of the East, but for some reason I still think there's something missing. Apart from Mitchell and maybe Mobley, I'm not sure they're ready for the big moment, and I think in the playoffs they could get upset by a team like Atlanta or Orlando. I think they'll be a great regular season team though, and I expect them to finish top 2 in the Eastern Conference this year. Next up, we have the Detroit Pistons. At point guard, we have Cade Cunningham. At shooting guard, we have Jaden Ivey, who's expected to miss some time, but is also expected to start when he's back. At small forward, we have Asar Thompson. At power forward, we have Tobias Harris. And at center, we have Jalen Duren. The Pistons were one of the stories of the NBA last season, from being a team that lost 28 games in a row to a bona fide playoff team and a team that almost took the Knicks to 7 games in their first playoff appearance with this roster. The addition of JB Bickerstaff has done wonders for this team, and they've maintained their defensive identity while also improving their offense massively. A huge part of that is their best player, Cade Cunningham, who I think is a legit superstar in this league. I think he has MVP potential, and I would not be surprised if he was an All-NBA player this year. I'm also really high on Asar Thompson, and I don't think he gets as much love as his brother. I think there's a good argument to be made that Asar is even a better defender than Amen, which is crazy to say as Amen is an incredible defender himself. They were also able to replace Malik Beasley, who was a big part for their offense last year, with sharpshooters Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert as well. I expect this team to be a firmly top 6 team in the Eastern Conference, and it could be a team that upsets some of the favorites come playoff time. They are not a team to be slept on this season. Next up, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. At point guard, we have Kevin Porter Jr. At shooting guard, we have Gary Trent Jr. At small forward, we have Kyle Kuzma. At power forward, we have, of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And at center, we have Miles Turner. After a disappointing season and a first-round exit to the Pacers, the Bucks made a stunning move and decided to stretch and waive Damian Lillard, who they had just traded for a few years back. They used this money to sign Miles Turner, which was another surprise, as many expect him to re-sign with the Pacers. This addition was viewed very, very highly by many, as Turner complemented their team, especially their best player. Speaking of Giannis, a lot has been surrounding his name, with trade talks, rumors, and speculations surrounding his future in Milwaukee. It is yet to be seen as to whether Giannis will spend the rest of his career as a Buck, but if the Bucks want to keep him for the future, they will need to have a good season. I think their team is solid, but has a lot of question marks, especially at the guard and wing positions. I don't trust Kevin Porter Jr. or Kyle Kuzma to start on a team that wants to compete, and I think they'll get exposed in that area. The hope for the Bucks is and has always been Giannis, so there is a world in which he can single-handedly drag them to the conference finals, but I expect this team to fall short once again this season. Rounding out the Central Division, we have the Indiana Pacers. At point guard, we have Andrew Nembhard. At shooting guard, we have Ben Mathurin. At small forward, we have Aaron Nesmith. At power forward, we have Pascal Siakam. And at center, we have Isaiah Jackson. After coming off an incredible year in which they made the NBA Finals, the Pacers unfortunately had to deal with the loss of their star player Tyrese Halliburton this season, who had suffered a torn Achilles in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Due to this, there are not as many expectations on the Pacers this season, but I don't think people should sleep on them. For one, I'm a big believer in Andrew Nembhard and do think he's a player that can win the Most Improved Player award this season, as that he will be having a lot of the ball handling and playmaking duties for this team with the absence of Tyrese Halliburton. I also think Pascal Siakam is the most underrated player in the league, and I do think we could see the Raptors version come out this year with added responsibility. I also do like the young players on this team like Johnny Furphy and Ben Shepherd, and I do think that Jarace Walker could potentially carve out a role in the rotation this season. I expect this team to finish along the top half of the East, either hovering around the play-in or just missing it, but I do think that if everything clicks, they could easily avoid the play-in and be a top 6 seed this season. Moving on to the Atlantic Division, we are starting off with the Boston Celtics. At point guard, we have Derek White. At shooting guard, we have Anthony Simons. At small forward, we have Jaylen Brown. At power forward, we have Sam Hauser. And at center, we have Neemias Queta. The Celtics are coming off of a disappointing year with the second-round loss to the Knicks, in which many thought they were heavy favorites. They had to deal with an Achilles injury to Jason Tatum as well, and he's set to deal with most of the year, if not all of it. Due to cap space, they also had to move on from both Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday during the offseason, so this team looks a little bit different this season. A lot of the onus will be on Jaylen Brown as he's due for more responsibility with no Jason Tatum by his side. Derek White is also a player that could take a bit of a leap as well, as without Holiday, he's the star point guard and the starting point guard of this team. They did add Anthony Simons, who I thought was a good pickup, and I do think Peyton Pritchard will definitely be a good enough piece off their bench to help with their depth. I think the Celtics are in the same range as the Pacers, where due to their star missing a lot of time, they could easily find themselves in and around the play-in this year, but are also capable to avoid it if they play well enough this season. There is also an outside shot apparently that Jason Tatum could be back this season, although we'll see if that's as realistic as possible. Next up, we have the Brooklyn Nets. At point guard, we have Yegor Demon. At shooting guard, we have Cam Thomas. At small forward, we have Terrence Mann. At power forward, we have Michael Porter Jr. And at center, we have Nicholas Claxton. Brooklyn is coming off of a pretty bad year in which they were one of the worst teams in the NBA and ended up netting 5 first-round picks this season. They ended up taking 3 point guards with 3 of those picks in Yegor Demon, Ben Seraph, and Nolan Traore, very much adopting the philosophy that one of those players should be good enough to be the point guard of the future, and essentially all 3 will be duking it out for the reins of the team. They also had a contract negotiation extensively with Cam Thomas, as he was asking for a lot more money that the Nets were willing to give up, but he eventually signed on the qualifying offer and is able to test free agency next year once more. They made a trade to trade away Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. and draft capital, which I don't think was terrible at all for a team that's rebuilding, and they have a clear direction, and that is to be bad and develop talent and hopefully gain a high draft pick. I think that this direction will go to plan, so don't expect much from this team this year, but I do think they can be a fun watch as their 3 guard lineups. Next up, we have next door neighbors New York Knicks. At point guard, we have Jalen Brunson. At shooting guard, we have Mikal Bridges. Small forward, we have OG Anunoby. Power forward, we have Karl-Anthony Towns. At center, we have Mitchell Robinson. The Knicks are coming off of an Eastern Conference Finals loss to the Pacers, in which they could not score in the clutch and ended up losing in 6 games. They didn't make many moves this offseason and for the most part ran it back with the core of this team. They were able to bring in Jordan Clarkson though, who will definitely help them be a punch off the bench and could definitely also help that aforementioned clutch time offense. Mitchell Robinson is also back from injury, which will be a big boost for them as it will make sure that Cat does not have to be a paint presence down low at all times and can have a breather or two defensively. They did also make a coaching change and have hired Mike Brown to replace Tom Thibodeau, who took Sacramento to the playoffs for the first time in 20 seasons before struggling to do much else with that team. I do think that the coaching change is a lateral move, but due to the East's vast injuries and question marks around teams, I would say that the Knicks are my early favorite to come out of the conference and end up in the NBA Finals. To me, anything short of that would be a disappointing year in my opinion, as this is their best chance to do so. Next up, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. At point guard, we have Tyrese Maxey. At shooting guard, we have 3rd overall pick VJ Edgecombe. At small forward, we have Kelly Oubre. At power forward, we have Paul George. And at center, we have Joel Embiid. The Sixers had an unexpectedly bad year, mostly due to injuries. Joel Embiid was only able to play a handful of games, and Paul George missed some time as well and struggled in the games that he did play. The rookie sensation Jared McCain also missed a significant amount of time last year and is also set to miss time this year to start off the season. Tyrese Maxey was the one pillar of this team who was consistent last year and is expected to have another big year. This team might be the most difficult to predict in the East though, mainly due to health around their star players. Joel Embiid's health is key, and if the reports are true that his knee is done, then I fear this team will not be able to reach its potential. But if he's somehow able to return back to the MVP form that we're accustomed to seeing, they could easily be a contender to make it out of the East. I'm not exactly sure where the Sixers will end up for that reason, as Embiid's health is such a big factor, but I do think that their backcourt is something to be excited about, as both Maxey and Edgecombe are electrifying and exciting guards that will keep Philly fans happy for the time being. Lastly, to round out the Eastern Conference teams, as well as the Atlantic Division, we have the Toronto Raptors. At point guard, we have Emmanuel Quickley. At shooting guard, we have RJ Barrett. At small forward, we have Brandon Ingram. At power forward, we have Scotty Barnes. And at center, we have Jakob Poeltl. The Raptors were also a team that were ravaged by injuries last year. They lost their guards and their best player, Scotty Barnes, for a significant amount of time last year and made a midseason acquisition where they traded for all-star forward Brandon Ingram from the Pelicans and promptly gave him a contract extension, which was a risky move as Ingram had not yet played one game for the Raptors. They also fired their team president, Masai Ujiri, which was a shocking move considering his track record with the team. This team does intrigue me though, and I like their wings and forwards that they have on this team. Ingram and Scotty, if healthy, do complement each other really well as one of the best forward duos in the conference, and I do think that Jakob Poeltl is one of the most underrated bigs in the NBA. I don't think this team is going to cement itself as a playoff team by any means, but I do think they can easily compete for a play-in spot. Unfortunately, due to depth issues though, at the guard position, I don't think they're going to make it much further than that, but I do think they're going to be a lock for the play-in my opinion. And with that being said, those are the breakdowns for all the teams in the Eastern Conference. I hope you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for the Western Conference team breakdown video tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Peace.